Jeff.
Well, I listened to all your stories, and you just shot my plans to pieces. So this feels just like a trade, like watching the opening price bar, because I had it all planned out what I was going to say today and what I thought the truth that I needed to share was. And then I heard Ernie. Let me just look at my notes because I'm totally off script now. But Ernie said, "What are the results that I expect?" And then he asked the question, "What are the results that I'm willing to work for?" And he commented that we know what we should be doing, but sometimes we don't do them, right? Everybody in life. And then I hear Chen Long talking about his energy level being a little bit low, and he thinks maybe he's over trading. And I heard Kuhn's questions and truth. So that inspired me just to tell a story that I really never planned to share. So I'm going to just start with some lesson notes, and I'll hopefully work up to executing the story that wants to be told. On lesson 4, win this battle and not the last. Interesting that even the greatest people at what they do, Hannibal was probably at one point considered the greatest general in the world, and he fell because of his inability to see reality. What he saw was not actually reality. It came to pass quickly that he was defeated, but I don't think he saw that coming. I tried to avoid. So it says pick exercise 1 says pick a historical war and study the first battle and the last. And I just have to admit that World War II aviation is kind of something that I've been involved in my whole life. So old World War II airplanes are still flying today. We have some, we fly them, and there's a lot of museums we support. We do a lot of funeral flyovers for World War II veterans. When they pass away, we fly the airplanes to their services and honor them that way. So I could speak for hours on that, but I won't do that at this time. Let's see. One thing I learned in my research, though, was something I didn't know. Apparently, the first battle of World War II was the Germans and the Polish at Westerplatte, where the Germans attacked a Polish army garrison there with battleships and kinetic weapons. So the battleship was the big force multiplier at that time, and the Polish did a very admirable job of holding them back for 6 days, I believe. And then obviously, if you go to the end of World War II, the atomic bomb was dropped, and then the second bomb was dropped, and that was the end. So there was really no response at that time to that weapon, right? So that was the end. From my perspective, just one quick footnote of a long story that I could tell is, I think the takeaway for this lesson for me was creativity creates creativity. So when somebody creates something so new and so innovative that it overpowers everything that you know, you're forced to get creative or perish or become irrelevant or whatever. Innovation demands better innovation, right? So it becomes this race of who's going to create, who's going to be the most creative and the fastest and best innovator to remain in their current position or to rise to the top or to fall to the bottom. So that was a big aha moment. But it also reminded me too, at the beginning of the war, we weren't even in it. It was a European war. And the Germans were innovating and creating new technologies and deploying them very rapidly. And in the air power war, which became a critical aspect in World War II, they were so fast at it that it inspired us, or it didn't inspire us, it just demanded that we respond in a creative, innovative manner. So at the beginning of World War II, the best aircraft we had was a P-40 Warhawk, which was the first monoplane fighter. Before that, it was biplane type, two-wing airplanes, very, by today's standards, very lackluster in their performance. But the P-51 Mustang was kind of the aircraft that came out of World War II, and it was a response to the German air superiority that they enjoyed for a while. The interesting thing is the prototype rolled out in September of 1940, 102 days after the order had been placed for it. They said, we need a really good fighter plane. It doesn't exist. Someone has to create this. So they did that in 102 days. It flew on the 26th of October 1940, 149 days from the day that they decided they would spend money to create it. An uncommonly short period of time. In this day and age, we can't even design a tire in 149 days. We can't get a bolt approved for use. An existing bolt that we know the specifications for, we can't get that bolt approved for installation in 149 days. So it makes me wonder if we're really as creative in some areas as we should be. Maybe we should go back to things that actually worked. Maybe we've gotten too far off the path. Good intentions have led to just things that aren't working. The zero state exercise was something that I've been working on for the last couple of weeks. I'm going to just kind of, it gave me the image that Ken probably had in mind, which is of a gladiator or a warrior preparing for battle. But it also, ironically enough, the opening lines of the story created an image of modern day of me just coming home at the end of the day, and you metaphorically shed your armor, which is the protective shield you have against the outside world and all the things you face out there. Once you get in your own home, you relax and you refresh because you're in your own safe, comfortable space, and you do your preparation for the next day of literally or figuratively doing battle when you go out and navigate the world and all the things you have to do out there. And that's just kind of a daily cycle in our lives. I kind of drew that parallel. And obviously it can all be applied to trading. I'm going to skip a lot of this and just go to the story that wants to be told. So I told you guys, I think on February 23rd, I started trading. I took 30 over a course of a week. I took 30 trades on the 3-minute chart in my best attempt to emulate or mimic the sniper trading techniques. And it didn't feel good. It felt, I didn't feel good enough because I'm comparing myself to Ken and the charts he posts every night. So I didn't think mine were good enough, but actually 30 trades, the best I could do on a 3-minute chart, produced results that I was proud of, and it showed me that I could actually do it. But it never felt right. It never felt good enough when I was doing it. But I also felt like I was over trading. I took 30 trades in a week's time, which felt like way too many to me because I'm not used to trading on these small time frames. And that evolved into this 1-minute challenge that I gave myself. I described a couple of weeks ago, and Ken said, it's like getting in the ring with Mike Tyson. You get in there and you do your best, and then you go rest for a while. Well, I kind of pushed that to the extreme and that's kind of why I didn't want to tell the story, because I figured, in my mind, my process is flawed and it's not the way it should be done. I know how to build a house, but it's not the way anybody else would build a house. So I just pushed that to the extreme. I've taken about 150 trades on the 1-minute chart, usually trading 2 at a time, and recently trading 4 1-minute charts at a time. And the idea is find out where all the limits are, my limits. There's no limits to the system. The system is the system. The market is the market. But it was the idea of the maximum sustainable rate of learning, and just pushing it, learning as much as I could in a week's time or 2. It's been 2 weeks actually doing this. And also the fact that I can't sit and trade all day long on one chart. So if I have 2 or 3 hours to trade, I want to get the most out of it. And there's no risk. That's the thing. I am trading real money because if I don't, I just won't take it serious. It looks like a video game right on the screen. But here's just some takeaways that I'll share. I didn't plan on it, but my fear of a 1 hour loss was totally real on a 1 minute chart with 11 cents of risk with an insignificant position size. I still felt fear, like I don't want to take a 1 hour loss. But actually the system is designed to take that loss, right? That's exactly what we plan to do. So doing that, there's no shame in that. That's an honorable thing. Take your loss because that trade didn't work. Um, the price action in the 1 minute chart freaked me out in the beginning, and then it was very difficult. And then you adjust to it, and you realize that that vertical movement is the same on every chart. It's just the scaling and the appearance that it gives when compared to the bars before it, right? So the moving 3 cents on a 3 minute chart or a 1 minute chart is still a 3 cent move or a 30 cent move. So there's no difference there. I found it helpful to zoom out, not to zoom in on the last 15 bars, to zoom out and get a little bigger perspective, especially when you're trading more than one. I also found it, I ended up muting the price bars to a light gray color so I could still see them, but just barely, which made me focus on the RL10 and the Dragon and the PSAR and not be drawn to the price, which helped a lot. I actually took this thing to the point 4 charts at a time is unsustainable for me. Fatigue sets in fairly quickly. You can do it. I can do it pretty well for maybe 30 to 60 minutes, and then it just all falls apart. And I do all the things that everyone else does. It's a human trait. My greatest failures occurred it's not that I can't see the patterns and I don't know where to enter or exit, or I don't have a plan, because trading those 1 minute charts forces you to make all those decisions in advance because you can't think about it in the moment. And I have a note here that says I can't think when I'm trading. I can think before I start trading, and I can think after I'm finished, but I cannot think properly when I'm in the trade. So that kind of highlighted all of Ken's teachings. He doesn't teach us to think about the trade when we're in it. He teaches us to think about it before we do it, so that in that moment we know where the stop is supposed to be, and the stop's where it is. And another thing I discovered is no matter where you put it, it'll get hit. So if you have your stop close, like a sniper exit, that's where you're going to get out. If you have it way back and you're hoping for a massive 3-legged move up, you're probably going to get hit there as well, whether that's a loss or a no lose plus dinner for 2. So one of my other notes is put your stop where it needs to be, where you'll be happy getting out, because it's probably going to get hit no matter where it's at. So the exits are extremely difficult. There's no I have a note here that says I can never be right. I can make money, but I can never be right because nothing feels right. When you do your after action review, you tend to be critical and say, oh, look what you did here. You should have had that stop further back and you would have caught the whole move. Or the opposite is true. On the next chart you look at, you say, oh, you should have had it closer because you gave back too much. So that's a very elusive thing, trying to be right. I also tried to separate trading for learning versus trading for profit. And I think I was successful in a way. And 2 weeks ago, I had this huge internal conflict, emotional conflict of I shouldn't be wasting my time doing this. I should be trading for money. And then it resolved itself. And this past week, I was calm the entire time, no emotion at all to speak of, but the conflict still existed in my head. So like it moved up into my head. So I have this intellectual debate going on that, do what you want to do. And when you get tired of doing that, then we'll go do something important. But it wasn't a emotional conflict. So I thought that was interesting. And now I think of the 1 minute chart kind of like the flight simulators that I train in. It's a good thing to do every now and then, to go push yourself to the limit and go learn these things and reinforce. What it does is it shows you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. And we tend to focus on the things we're doing wrong, and we don't give ourselves credit for what we're doing right. But my big breakdown was worth everything because it was with order entry on my platform. So I think in the beginning I was afraid of wrecking my histogram because I had this beautiful histogram and all my stats looked great. Well, I've wrecked that because I have so many trades that are at 0 or 0.2 wins or 1 R losses that's all wrecked. So I can just get over that, right? Not worry about that and just keep on trading. But also, I realized that I'm going to be learning for every trade for as long as I trade. So they don't have to be mutually exclusive. It's not like you only learn when you're trying to learn and you only make money when you're trying to make money. Because for my whole life, I've been learning and trying to make money at the same time. So I think those two things don't have to be separated, and they probably shouldn't, because we never quit learning. Even when we master some of the techniques, we have to continue to keep our data. This is coming from someone who never kept data before for whatever reason. I was too lazy. I was afraid to see what my performance actually was, whatever it was. I'm now addicted to the data. And the data, so I gave myself free reign for 2 weeks to do whatever, to do whatever I wanted to do on these 1 minute charts. But one of the rules was you have to keep the data. So I have the trade log data for every trade I took. I have the journal entries for every day, and I did that. And when you're taking 20 or 30 trades a day, that's a lot of work to get all that stuff put in there. So that in and of itself is a reason for me to trade less, because it's less work at the end of the day. And the idea of over trading, I don't think 30 trades a week is over trading actually on a small time frame, especially if you're trading more than one symbol. That seems to be a very reasonable thing to do. Now, taking 30 trades a day on a 1 minute chart, for me, feels way too many. And my results bear that out. The fewer trades, the better the results of those trades. So I think I've got this. I think this is a Larry Williams quote from about 35 years ago. But on the 1 minute chart, it seems like fear keeps me from doing the thing that I should do. And I just did it anyway. So I realized also, and then greed makes me do the things that I shouldn't do, right? If that kind of emerged from that experience. But I lost my train of thought here. During the course of that, I kind of explored my zero state like a room. So I don't know exactly where it is, but I know it. Oh, here was my train of thought. In the beginning, on those first 30 trades where I did well, I was just using my sheer willpower to overcome my emotions because I knew the rules and I was determined to follow them, and none of it felt right, but it was just willpower. The problem with that is it doesn't feel good when you're doing it. And if I don't ultimately learn to enjoy this, I don't think that I'll continue it. So I was looking at other states that I could be in and still trade well. And so I kind of explored my zero state as if it were a room, and I found out where the walls were. And I found one way to trade that feels so great, just relaxed, calm, not attached to the results. The state that I feel like that I want to be in when I trade produces the worst results for me because I'm too detached to actually remain engaged. I get bored, and then the boredom leads to you taking trades that you shouldn't take because you have this little voice saying, let's take a trade, I'm bored. So that's not my space. The test pilot willful space is not it either. It produces really good results, but it just drains me of energy and I can't sustain it. I think ultimately it's going to be something like a hunter's mindset where you go out into the woods and you have a mission, but you're willing to wait patiently until it's time to act. So it's not too relaxed because my results show that that's not good. And I hear my story in all of your stories. So I don't know if any of this makes any sense to you guys, but it just felt like this is what I needed to say today. And the last thing is the reason I kind of came back to Tortoise Capital is to develop the ability to stop and reverse and to trade the short side of the market. So I have traded the short side of the market for a long time in a fearful and unfocused way. I would have a plan and then I would take profits too soon because they happen so much quicker on the downside than the upside that I wouldn't hold on to those trades the way I should. That was one of my reasons for doing this in the first place. But I finally had the courage a couple of weeks ago to take some overnight risk on these within this tortoise framework. I have another account that trades separately. So I had two positions that I elected to hold short overnight, and I felt really good about it. And I thought I'd done my homework and everything was great. And then I watched the nightly podcast, and Ken puts his bullish case out for both of my positions, and he's holding those two positions long. And I immediately felt fear, like, doubt, uncertainty, like I got the whole thing wrong. And ultimately, I think it probably worked out for both of us. I exited the positions on the open with a profit, and I think in his longer time frame swing, he was in the middle of a multi-day swing, and his trades probably paid too. So you can both get paid. It depends on your time frame and your plan. But ultimately, the market doesn't care what I've planned. It doesn't care. This is just out of my journal on one of my low moments when I was thinking, that I can do better. It says the market doesn't care what I've planned. It doesn't care that I've studied. It'll tell its story for the day in its own time and in its own way. And my job is to carefully observe and accept the story of the market for what it is as a trader. Because we try to guess what it's going to do. I try to guess what it's going to do next. I try to plan for what I'm going to do when it does X, Y, or Z, and then it does something totally different. So my best trading is actually just watching. I can observe it and describe it, but I have no ability to predict it. And that's highlighted when you trade a 1 minute chart for a long time. So yeah, I think that's it. And I also had the listening to you guys, I had an epiphany this week that I'm much nicer to my student than I've been for the past 2 weeks. He went home, and I realized I'm much nicer to him than I am to myself. So he was in my trader seat, so to speak, when he was doing this aviation training, and he was down on himself, and he felt like he wasn't good enough. And I was the encouraging coach saying, look, we all start at zero. And I was constantly encouraging him, but I realized I don't do that to myself too much. So I think it's important that we have balance in our assessment, and maybe just begin by finding out all the things that we do right or that I do right before I start putting on that critical hat and beating myself up for the things that I wish I'd done better. So, I hope.